There is a fifth dimension.
A dimension of sound.
Damn it, Frank! We tell him to be quiet. I spilled my hot cup of Uranus again.
A dimension of sight.
Hey, Arch. I'm gonna sock you in the puss.
A dimension of mind.
Nan Adams, is that you?
Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Fifth Dimension Twilight Zone podcast. Wait a second. Are we in black and white? This doesn't seem right. I'm now rhyming and whatever. Let's go to color.
Ah!
No.
What the hell, man?
I'm actually
I
white.
know. I just imagine that. I'm still bald.
Imagine that. I still don't have legs.
I know, right? And you still love Uranus.
I try. I don't know if it loves me back, though.
Oh, shit.
Mine loves you, and there's enough love here for everybody.
Aww.
No. Happy Halloween, guys. It is officially, as of October 14th, now officially Halloween.
Woohoo!
Because this video is posting on Halloween. And yeah, so I hope you guys have gotten a lot of candy and are very sick and having nightmares from your candy and, you know, crushing pumpkins and doing whatever you do on Halloween, sexy time, all that good stuff, and cat costumes. You know how this works. Today, you might notice this is a little bit different video for the Fifth Dimension, and there's a reason for that. I want to get into it, but before we do that, we are on audio feeds. We are on, you know, all kinds of cool stuff like Anchor and Audio Boom and Anus and guys punching bags and, you know, iTunes and SoundCloud. And Harry Styles sitting on people. Yeah, we're on Uranus. So but yeah. So anyways, I also have my co-host here, which of course include Jacob from Jacob Andrews Reviews, and of course Triff from Trivial Theater. How the hell are you guys?
What's up?
Pimping.
Yeah, in color. Or pimping in color.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
But yeah, we're here. We're all doing good. As you know, the last episode was, of course, Bongo. That was an interesting episode to edit, just to let you know. It was Bongo is a character. I hope you guys enjoyed it. At least I hope the viewers enjoyed it very much. So we'll see. But no, the reason we're doing this video is I am moving here soon. By the time you probably watch this video, I've already moved and more episodes have come out. But I am going to be taking a little break from my channel. So what I wanted to do was, because Bongo was the last episode, I felt like that's a cool place to end it till we can get back into the normal stride of things. But I also wanted to do a Halloween episode and talk a little bit different, something a little bit different. And I was like, you know, would you guys be interested in you know, talking like Outer Limits or, you know, whatever nonsense that UA Bowl or Tommy Wiseau put out, and they said they looked up in the sky and said no. So that was definitely vetoed. And yeah, so they're like, you know what we could do? And I'm like, what? They're like, we could just do nothing. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And so as I get to the real reason why we're doing this, yeah, I was like, hey, you want to do a segment from the Twilight Zone movie? Because we were talking about doing it during Christmas, having someone from different channels doing it in each episode. This is like before Jacob came on, because I wanted to do like a really cool thing to take a month off and have these videos. And then Jacob became a host, and that kind of fell through the floor. And
I fucked everything up.
Yes,
We're
Jacob,
glad that you do, man.
Fucked it all up.
yeah.
So what'd I do?
I know, right?
You make it better because you do fuck it up.
That's what she said.
I hope so.
No, but in all honesty, I felt like stopping it where the Bongo episode and taking, you know, I'm going to be taking a break for hopefully not longer than a month or two. And just doing a segment from the Twilight Zone movie. We all decided on which particular segment, which you've seen in the title card for this. It's one that people may not remember from the Twilight Zone movie very well, but I think it's one of the underrated portions of it, to be fairly honest.
Really?
Especially when you don't think it's underrated?
I thought it was one of the more popular ones from the movie.
Agreed.
I thought it was
Really?
like
I
the
don't know,
most
man.
popular one from the movie.
I hear people talking more about the Joe Dante one, the one with the kid, and you know.
I mean, that's my favorite, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but I just always thought that just like the signature segment.
I mean,
I
yeah,
don't
this
know,
one is
who am I?
probably the closest to the Twilight Zone episode that it's attached to.
I mean,
Isn't
it's
it?
possible. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's the least controversial. I can tell you that much.
Nobody
So,
died.
Well, considering
Yeah.
the most controversial one, that's not that far of a leap. I mean, you could like kill people.
There were decapitations in that one. Okay,
Yes,
so
exactly.
Yeah, and there's other things like racism and decapitations, and it's the Twilight Zone, people. It's the 80s. What were you expecting?
I mean,
that first
everything
one
has
is
porpoise,
the Twilight
but
Zone.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
legit. But no, so if you don't know, yes, they did a Twilight Zone movie. Yes, people like John Landis and Spielberg and Joe Dante and George Miller did direct the episodes. Yes, it is a anthology movie. Yes, it is a anthology movie with retellings of stories that were told in the TV series that was produced by Rod Serling. And it is the Twilight Zone movie. Twilight Zone the movie. It's an interesting beast, to say the least. And it's
You know what else it has?
You're
You know what else it
reminding me.
has?
no.
You know what
What
else
is
it
that?
has? It
What?
has credence.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In the midnight special, I just got a claim of taking down my channel.
Oh man, credence.
I don't think
is
you have
cool.
anything to worry about. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, probably not. Yeah. So Creedence Creedence CCR, as they're called. Yes, there is a main song in this movie. It is played at the very beginning, but we'll talk about that. This is an interesting thing because it not only does it take stories that have been told through Rod Serling's famous show, but it adds a lot of people who were very inspired by Rod Serling. It has a lot of famous talent, actors, actresses, screenplay writers, story writers.
A cartoon dragon.
Yeah, cartoon dragons. It's produced by, of course, Spielberg and Landis, and Frank Marshall, and everybody's favorite Kathleen Kennedy. It's edited
And
by
Kathleen Kennedy. She did some shit back in
Oh,
the day, man.
yeah,
People talk
she
shit
was-
about her now, but she was like a powerhouse back then.
Mhm.
Yeah, she was.
She's attached to a
She's
lot of
the
stuff.
most famous producer of all time. That is
Yeah,
not
she
her
was
husband, Frank
attached-
Marshall.
She was attached to some huge things. She was on everything, all the big stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, we got to give her that.
No,
Then
yeah.
she got into
definitely.
Star Wars.
Oh man.
And at this point, she knew she fucked up.
Oof. Yeah.
But you have like people like Alan Davio, who is a famous cinematographer who worked with Steven Spielberg. You have people like John Hora. You have people like Michael Kahn, who is Spielberg's editor. And one of the most important people to work on this project is, of course, Jerry Goldsmith, who, of course, worked with Rod Serling on the TV show and also worked, with Joe Dante and Gremlins. So there is very much a theme in this series that, of course, plays out through the entire movie. Looking from it from a I'm sure it's been a while since most of us have seen this. I mean, I've seen it quite a bit, and we've all seen it because we're actually alive when this came out. At least I think we were all born already born by the time this movie came out. Let me starting out asking you this question, like, what do you think about the Twilight Zone, the movie? Like, not even about the episodes, just about it as a whole, like with knowing the fact that it's based off the segments that Rod Serling did for his show, at least most of it is. With this level of talent and this type of movie that was made, what do you guys think of this overall movie as a whole, just in general? Just kind of curious of what you guys thought of it, even with all the controversies and stuff like that, us talking about Twilight Zone, talking about how exciting the idea of like, what Rod Serling was doing. How did you guys think it was, like, on a, like as a whole?
Are we talking like when we first saw it, or like
No, just in
watching
general,
it
like,
now?
I know we've all seen this like several times. So like, what do you think as, as a Twilight Zone product, as a movie, as a homage to Rod Serling, all that good stuff? What do you guys think?
When I watched this just as like, caught it on sci-fi or whatever, honestly, I can't say that I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it a ton, just because I had seen all the episodes, and it's like, I've seen this done. It's been done better in the actual episodes by Rod Serling in the 60s. And I don't mean to sound harsh, because they did their own thing. It was homage. They all brought their own spin to stuff. Once I got into the actual like meat and potatoes of what happened behind the scenes and all the talent behind it and the people that put their love and stuff into it, I gained a lot more affection for it. So
it's been a while since I've seen the full movie. I mean, today I just watched the segment we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
And the opening. I remember really liking the movie, and I remember it pretty vividly because I've seen it quite a few times. And I do recall not, I guess, like the first two, because I think the first two are the most controversial one about the guy with the kids and all that.
Yeah.
That was one of my least favorites. I remember that. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just kind of like, okay, this is one I just got to get through to get to the ones I like. The two that I like the most are the one that we watched today, and also the one with the little kid, which I think we said Joe Dante did that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Spielberg one, I recall not really caring for that one much either.
So if you watch it today, it's so fucking boring. It really
is.
I'm not a huge fan of that segment. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Kick the Can in general, but yeah, it's real tedious. It has Scatman Crothers in it. How do you make Scatman Crothers boring?
Well,
he wasn't in it enough. That's a problem.
Yeah, he got killed by Jack Torrance. Why do you? What come on, people.
But not in the book. But anyway,
right.
I didn't like. So I guess I liked like half the movie, and the other half I was just kind of like, yeah, it's fine. I like the little parts that interconnect. I thought I was under the impression also. I guess it's been longer than I thought since I saw this movie, because the whole Albert Brooks, Dan Akroyd part, I really thought that went throughout the film. I remember it being like like in between each episode, we saw them talking or something, kind of like a what was it, Tales from the Dark Side kind of thing. But no, it just all happened. I thought the thing that happens that Dan Akroyd does was towards the end of the movie, but it was all there in the beginning.
Yeah.
I also have a question. Segment. And I don't know if this is Mandela effect or if I'm not sure. I remember watching the controversial like segment, but it having the chopper crash in it. Was there ever a version that had the chopper crash as part of it?
No, because they were actually supposed to from what I remember and reading about, it was supposed to be that segment. There was supposed to be this whole big segment that was supposed to end the movie with either him going back to Vietnam or having a Vietnam. It was a segment of something of that nature where he was going to be stuck there. And because of everything that happened, it ended with him on the train at the end of the episode. It's something of that nature. It was supposed to be something that was more fleshed out. That's why when you watch the episode or watch the segment, it's really weirdly jarring how quickly it just kind of ends. It's because they lost that whole segment with the two kids. Like that whole segment was supposed to be one big portion of the it was like supposed to add like a couple more minutes into the movie, and it was taken out, of course, because of you don't want to see kids getting their heads chopped off in real life. Yeah,
well, and it was like from a distance, like you saw this. I don't know. Maybe it was like watching the footage that they, you see on YouTube, and maybe somehow I connected the two. But I've severe Mandela effect where I've seen that as part of the movie.
I think maybe it's because we've read about it so much.
Possibly,
and we've seen behind the scenes stuff and all that. It's kind of like our brains filled in the gap, and it's almost as if we've seen it ourselves. And so, I could see that. I don't recall it ever actually seeing it, though.
I can't think they'd put it out. I mean, that would be crazy.
I've always known about it because I remember my mom telling me about it when the movie first came out and I first saw it. I remember her telling me that some people died while they were making that part.
Yeah, I mean they have footage like of the actual accident, but you just see like the helicopter crash on the kids. So,
yeah.
I've seen that. You see him like carrying it or like running with it like this.
Yeah.
And it's real grainy. It's not like
it's behind the scene cameras. Yeah,
it's not like gruesome or anything.
No. I think it actually made its debut on like Faces of Death or something like that, if I remember right.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
One other kind of fun trivia thing for like the way that things were supposed to be versus the way that they are. So at the end, the way that it ends, there's a ambulance that drives off into the distance, and in the script, it was supposed to be characters from each one of the stories was supposed to interact with that ambulance as it drove away in some way, shape, or form, but it didn't end up happening. So obvious reasons.
That would have been interesting. I actually want to read it. It's really interesting that when I watched this as a kid, I remember the the kid segment freaking me out. But if you go back and watch it, Joe Dante is very inspired by wacky comedies and Looney Tunes, and it's very much a Looney Tunes movie.
Oh, it
in a lot of
is.
respects.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be, because he's
Yeah.
he's projecting this. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that one eventually, but that's like his twisted version of like Looney Tunes and stuff like that.
Mhm.
This kid.
Well, and it's cool because the what happens in the what happens in the foreground, like the cartoon in the background kind of
TV show,
reflects it. Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's
You guys
very
must have watched it today.
No, I watched the entire thing just to get it in
no,
my head.
I know it by heart. I've seen it I've seen this movie like probably 40 times in my life.
I've seen it
yeah.
a ton too. I remember a lot of it vividly, but clearly I just remember it out of order or something. Because I thought the one we're watching today was before that other one, and there was the ambulance. I mean, but I remember all the parts of it. I just remember.
I
it's
actually
4 stories, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Not including
it's like
the Dan
wrap
Aykroyd
around.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the kick the can, the controversial one. Sorry, the controversial one, kick the can, the wishing
Joe Dante kid one,
the Joe Dante kid one, and then the airplane one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good life, is what it is.
I
really like.
Is it?
I don't know. That actually has Kathleen Quinlan in it, which and of course Kevin McCarthy, Mr. Walter Jameson himself. So,
oh, that's right, he is in that. We're talking about that. That's the one I wanted to talk about. We're talking about that one more than the one we're supposed to be getting into. And I didn't watch that one.
I have to read this because it's pretty funny. Roger Ebert did a review for this, and he said he rated each segment individually, awarding them on a scale of 4 stars. 2 for the prologue. He gave 2 for the prologue in his first segment, 1.5 for the second, 3.5 stars for the 2 segment, the prologue. He gave 2 stars, 1.5 for the second one, 3.5 stars for the third, and 3.5 for the final. Ebert noted that the surprising thing is the 2 superstar directors, Landis and Spielberg, are thoroughly routed by 2 thoroughly routed by 2 lesser known directors whose previous credits have been horror and action pictures. Spielberg, who produced the whole picture, perhaps sensed that he and Landis had the weakest results since he assembled the stories in ascending order of excitement. Twilight Zone starts slow, almost grinds to a halt, and then has a fast comeback. I like the idea of 2 lesser known directors who are actually, Joe Dante and George Miller. And George Miller, of course, had like one of the greatest action films of like the last 20 years. So,
but that's how you got to think. This was 83. So Dante.
No, I know.
Hey, he hadn't even done Gremlins. He was doing Gremlins right then, I think. Gremlins came out in 84, right?
Yeah.
So he hadn't done. Joe Dante wasn't anybody yet, and I think maybe
George
he
Miller
had done
Mad Max.
He had Mad Max, and maybe by 83 had he done Road Warrior, Mad Max 2? I
think
that may have
so.
been
Yeah, Road Warrior came out in 82. Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. I thought it was 82. So yeah, he had done those 2, but those were big in Mad Max was big in Australia,
right?
And it came over here and was big for import, but it wasn't until Road Warrior that it really blew up. So that was like literally right around the same time as this movie. So he wasn't really big, huge then.
Yeah, this is his
third. Think about that.
Right. This is his third overall thing he ever did for film. So, and then of course he went on to do Witches of Eastwick and Lorenzo's Oil.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so
Fury Road.
What's up?
Tina Turner's Thunderdome.
I'll never get beyond Thunderdome.
We are going to do something different today. We're not going to talk about the whole movie. I like I said, that would take us like 3 hours to do the whole movie because there's a lot of movie. It's an hour and 40 minutes long. It was a commercial success. It only cost $10 million to make, which is pretty impressive, even though it was 1983. Because Star Wars cost $10 million, so the budget is very small for a Twilight Zone movie, which is what they were able to kind of milk out of that $10 million budget with the cast and crew. It makes me wonder they probably
VHS.
yeah. I'm guessing a lot of these directors and writers, they took back end points, which is, when the movie makes money, they'll make money instead of like, their director's salaries and stuff. Because at this point, John Landis is a hugely famous director. Steven Spielberg is a hugely famous director at this point. Joe Dante and George Miller are early directors that are going to be famous in their own right.
Up and coming.
Yeah, up and coming. And
did the movie, it didn't do well though, did it?
It made $42 million for 1983, so that's probably
so
close to
quadrupled.
100. Yeah.
Quadrupled its budget, so that's something. It was
Yeah.
profitable.
Yeah, and I'm sure the marketing, is very lesser compared to like the billions of dollars they put into each movie today. But
Well, it had an established name behind it too, so
yeah,
Well, they
yeah,
also
exactly.
lost a lot of money on that whole lawsuit thing with the
Oh,
kids
yeah.
and the families and all that. So that was a shit
Yeah.
show. They were talking about jail time at one point in time.
Oh yeah, he was acquitted. Yeah, he almost went to jail.
wow.
But of course, I think there's something to the story about Spielberg gave his money to like a charity or something like that because he didn't want it. And then of course he broke his relationship with John Landis because they were good friends. And of course he was in Beverly Hills Cop 3 and stuff like that. But today we're actually going to because the prologue kind of interjects into the very end of the movie with the last segment we're going to talk about. I wanted to just talk about the prologue, and I have to ask you guys going in, this prologue is set up pretty nicely with, Dan Akroyd and Albert Brooks, they're not given a name. They're just driving down a road and they're having, what two people on a road trip in 1980s would do is just listen to music until the tape deck explodes and eats the tape and they start talking to one another. And I know me personally, because I was only like less than a year old when this came out. Do either of you remember stuff like this fondly, like sitting in the car or just listening to tapes and like what like did this bring up nostalgia for you, or were you guys just in general, what do you guys think?
Dude, I remember I remember 8 tracks in cars. Okay. It was the early days, but yeah, hell yeah, I remember tape. My first car had a tape deck. I had tapes. Yeah, I remember riding in the car, and that was my childhood. Listening to tapes or the radio, but
Yeah.
Tapes, and the motherfuckers would get ate up. They didn't spit the tape out like in this movie, but I guess that was just for a visual flair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If
you live
I
through
love how
the age of tape, then you know about tapes getting eaten. It is what it is. It happens.
Yeah,
You have to try to reel them back in.
Yep.
With a pin.
Yep.
I love how this is the Twilight Zone and the tape gets eaten, but the radio doesn't work. It's like, wait, what?
Well, the radio doesn't work
Yeah.
because there was no reception out there.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting
no
there's satellite now.
entertainment.
Yep. No entertainment.
Yeah, there was no
Strip
Sirius
joints.
XM.
Need to find the Titty Twister bar at the Mexico-America border.
Right.
Or just over the border.
But I mean, what about you, Trip? Did it, seeing like, because you come from a time like that, like I said, it's not like I didn't grow up from that time, but like,
old lady.
Yeah, I'm so ancient.
You old lady, you come from a
No,
time.
We had
You
record
know what I
players,
mean.
and we had a record player in my car, and we had to
Oh my
crank it.
Hey, that was a thing. That's a thing. There
I'm
are
sure it
cars
was.
from further back than this.
Well, I would hope so.
There were cars that had little record players in the consoles.
Well,
Not a
that's
lot
awesome.
of them. I mean, think about it. You hit a bump in the road, it skips, but it was a thing. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, it grew up in an era of tapes, and I never, was old enough to turn off the lights and, drive down a black highway and, all that. But yeah,
my sister did that shit to me.
Nice.
He's like,
6
there's
years
rocks
older
on the
than me.
road.
I mean, this wasn't
she turned the fucking lights off while we were driving and scared the shit out of me.
This wasn't necessarily
1991 Probe.
This wasn't necessarily like, I mean, I can relate to this, but I can't really like go, yes, great nostalgia from it just didn't, the conversations, the rest, but
I'm pretty sure you weren't a 30-something male in a car with another 30-something male talking about.
Not that I remember.
Yeah, man. I mean,
yeah, we don't know.
I mean, I am kind of timeless, but I don't think.
Right.
It was back when you didn't have a phone to look at.
Yeah.
And you had to just like talk and like interact with people. I know that's a crazy foreign thing nowadays, but people actually spoke face to face back then. Like when you had downtime, instead of looking down at this electronic device and reading nonsense, you actually interacted with people around you. Fucking insanity. What the hell's wrong with you?
And I don't know about you guys, but do you get the impression that these guys are one of them a hitchhiker and one of them's not? Like,
that's what I was going to ask next.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Or one of those situations where they like put like an ad in saying, "Hey, I'm driving cross country," and somebody else is looking for a ride. They used to do that. They used to do that kind of thing. Like you'd look in the personal ads, and I'm driving to so and so, and somebody would ride with them
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that back then. Now it's called Uber, but they used to do that back then, and that's how you end up with the beginning of a fucking horror movie.
Yes.
I
Like
know,
this one.
right?
Some damn good ones too.
Not to kind of spoil it, but like there is two of the most disturbing moments of my childhood are this and Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. And you know what I'm talking about. So
Large March, tell
yeah.
Large March that you.
But this segment's like really it's basic. It's pretty basic. It's two guys driving down the road. They're listening to tape, creating CCR, and of course, the tape gets destroyed. And they start singing off like obscure like show.
It's Hawaii 5-0, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Da, 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 da,
That was the one that they didn't. Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah, I like how he starts singing
making
like
up
words
fucking
to
words.
Da, 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 da.
There were never
That
words to
England's
it.
over there.
But I gotta ask you guys, of course Dan Akroyd is a pretty famous comedian at this point. Albert Brooks is also a pretty famous comedian. Having these two start out the movie knowing who they are at this point in their career, what do you guys think of this? Like, not really getting into like the moment where it feels like the Twilight Zone, but it's just two guys driving down the road, famous people talking. Like, did you get a sense of like, that this was cool? What did you guys think overall of like having those two start out this movie?
You didn't quite know where it was going.
No.
You assumed something humorous and not necessarily like, and even though you knew it was Twilight Zone, I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be like, I guess, jump scary.
Yeah. Like, let me ask you that real quick. Do you think it deters from like what the Twilight Zone is, or do it feels more like horror than like a Twilight Zone segment, I guess you could say?
I think it plays into the trope that the Twilight Zone is horror, because he even says, man, those episodes of Twilight Zone, they used to freak me out. And they really play into the horror aspect of it when he's talking about the Twilight Zone. So I think it does actually play into that not trope, but that belief that the Twilight Zone is a lot of horror when it's really not.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a little bit, but there's less horror. There's more sci-fi and just, ironic coincidences than or ironic twists of fate than horror in the Twilight Zone. But it's song, especially at this point when the movie came out in the 80s and the 90s, whenever like that's the dee song and everything, that all kind of signified like this weird horror kind of thing. It's just, as we've learned, or I've learned while watching the show, it's just not that.
This always gives me like, this open feels very much more like Tales from the Crypt or Creep Show than it does Twilight Zone.
Tales from the Dark Side or something.
Tales from the Tales from the Dark Side. It's got that, because he turns around and all of a sudden he's a monster. There's no subtlety, and that's what the Twilight Zone for the most part is.
I liked it. I'm with you. I liked it, but it wasn't very Twilight Zone.
No, definitely not.
Yeah,
I should horror in your face, and Twilight Zone was never really that.
I suppose it was the 80s, and they were everything, being that it's a movie, they kind of gotta amp it up a bit.
Well, that's the thing. Like the 80s Twilight Zone did like delve into more horror, because like I always bring up this segment or this segment of the Twilight Zone 80s series. Like it's called Grandma or something like that. It's like pure horror. It's like, it's actually quite scary for what it is. But I think that's what, to me personally, what this represents is what the transitioning of like what sci-fi and horror was doing in the 80s and 70s and stuff like that. It was way different than what the 50s and the 40s and 50s dealt with, like monster creature effects, or 50s and 60s, I'm sorry, dealt with like creature monster movies and paranoia. This is the 80s, and 80s were like body horror and stuff like that, and
creatures,
Pee-wee's Pee-wee's Big Adventures and stuff like that, with Large Marge. And
back then the horror was more it played into an actual true fear that people had of like the Ruskies, and we're going to be attacked and taken over or something like that. And there's lots of paranoia in the Twilight Zone.
And like I said, it is directed by John Landis. He did the first two segments, the prologue and the last segment, or the first segment, and it basically concludes with like Dan Akroyd just out of the blue goes, "Hey, you want to see something really scary?" And he's like, "Sure, scare me because I've already tried to scare you and it didn't work." And so he pulls over, which you should never do, or if you pull over, you should just run away because you're going to be consumed by a monster. And Dan Akroyd goes into the shadows for like a second. He's like doing this, like, and he like turns around, and then he has like what was actually very scary as a kid looks really cheesy now, but he becomes a creature and just eats Albert Brooks. He just kills Albert Brooks, and then
does he eat him? Because he like
Is
grabs him and starts choking him and going and he kind of looks like he might go or and then it cuts, but he's just kind of going and Albert Brooks is like
Well, if you listen with headphones, I don't know if you're listening with headphones, but you can hear like sounds like somebody's being eaten. So
okay.
yeah, that might be
kind of a
yeah, like all the
Gumming him
Foley
to
work
death.
that's going on. Yeah.
Yep.
But this leads
ASMR
into,
channel coming soon.
yeah, the Twilight Zone ASMR channel. But of course, this leads into the very what we call Superman-esque 80s intro for the Twilight Zone. And as Tripp pointed out, I think before we were recording, if you look at the eyeball, you can actually see a couple clips of Rod Serling smiling, doing his thing. So, and the famous Burgess Meredith does the voiceover work for Rod Serling in this, and he is quite good because Burgess Meredith is a really good actor. So, and of course he was in like 4 different episodes of the Twilight Zone. But did you guys like the opening thing, or are you too close to the chest or vest or with the original? Like, what did you guys think of this like kind of updated opening?
The intro itself.
Yeah, the Burgess. Yeah.
I so I have 2 minds of it, like where you have the practical stuff like the eye and the window and the door. It was great, but then you get like the wooden like artist doll that kind of floated through in the original. They've got like a wireframe like computer generated model, and then they got E=MC² coming through as a Superman-esque graphic. I don't know. I mean, I know that they're probably trying to cross multiple generations with that.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they did Burgess Meredith for that part. Like the individual intros to each one, I get that because Serling wasn't around. But why did they get Burgess Meredith? Because all he was doing was saying Rod Serling's, right? Wasn't it more or less word for word what Rod Serling says on the show every week?
Yeah.
I think
it's season 4 or 5.
Because they use Serling in the end.
Yeah,
but they use Serling in the end. Why not use him in the beginning too? For that, I think. I mean, me myself, Rod Serling is synonymous with the Twilight Zone. So I don't understand why they didn't use Hot Rod for that one too.
Yeah, I think it had to do. Hot Rod. I think it had to do with like because Burgess is so beloved in the Twilight Zone lore that they thought it, because I think Tripp brought up the point. I think he did do the narration for the 80s version. So that might be why.
Okay. I mean, I know he did like 27 original episodes. So.
Yeah.
I would also add that I'm assuming because like with the individual story in betweens, if you just had him do those, they'd kind of look at it and go, why is he voicing these? You kind of have to build it into that. So that might have been why they put him at the open. That would be my guess, to give some precedence for
why there wasn't a sudden voice change, even though that's what happens in the end when he goes to Rod Serling. But I guess people know, hey, that's Rod Serling.
Dude, Burgess Meredith was an ancient elf in Santa Claus the movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's
also the penguin.
He is the penguin indeed.
Penguin.
I think he was still looking for his glasses in that. Oh, he was in Magic too. Interesting. Anyways, so that is the opening kind of portion of the episode. Like I said, the reason I wouldn't have talked about it if it didn't kind of interject with the ending of the actual movie, which actually we'll talk about the last segment. And like I said, it's not that I didn't want to talk about the other segments, but we kind of decided just to do the one segment so this isn't a 3-hour podcast. But anyway, so with that, yeah, probably until I edit it all out. So segment 4 is the last segment of the series, and it transitions pretty easily from the Joe Dante episode segment to this one. This is an episode that is directed by George Miller. It is based off the script or written by Richard. It said written by Richard Matheson, but I'm assuming it's based off like the story that he did. Yeah, because this is also based off the famous William Shatner episode, which we'll talk about in about 6 years from now. Yeah, because it's like season 5, I think, is the episode, if I remember right.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that far?
Yeah,
Exactly.
So
there is
that
also a movie that's Terror at 35,000 feet.
Is there?
With the same premise?
Yeah. Well, it's more so like it's got Shatner in it and everything. No, I'm sorry, it was Horror at 35,000 feet.
And they had William Shatner in it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I picked it up as a DVD. I don't know much about it, but I picked it up as a DVD when I started my channel because it looked interesting. Because
I know the reboot that what's his face Jordan Peele did. He did one with Adam Scott, which I love Adam Scott. He's really good in like Severance and stuff like that. But I don't know if you guys watched that episode. It's really bad. It's terrible. I
haven't watched any of the new ones.
Oh, he plays a podcast host, and like I'm not gonna spoil for you, but the ending it's bad. It doesn't make any sense. But this segment, of course, has been parodied by The Simpsons and stuff like that. With the Bart Simpson episode, which has one of my favorite jokes with Molman about the Gremlins. So if you know it, you know it. But what I'll do is, as we always do, I'll let Jacob read like the two-line dialogue, the 2-line opening narration. It's pretty quick, but it starts out the segment. Real
quick. The Horror at 37,000 feet is a 73 American horror television film that stars Buddy Epstein, William Shatner, and Paul Winfield. It features hapless passengers and crew plagued by demonic forces from within the baggage hold.
So this is like what is that James Bond movie that wasn't actually a James Bond movie situation?
Is that Casino Royale?
No.
I know which one he's talking about. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, I remember which one you're talking about.
So, anyways, yeah, go ahead and read that narration.
Let's see, this is Burgess Meredith. Let's see, what's a good Burgess Meredith voice?
Rocky.
I mean, of course, I was hoping my throat's hurting a bit, so I don't know if I want to do the what you're looking at could be the end of a particularly terrifying nightmare. It isn't. It's the beginning, you bum. Introducing Mr. John Valentine, air traveler. His destination, the Twilight Zone, you bum. I mean, we can go with that. Or like the softer Burgess, where he's like,
oh my God.
What you're looking at could be the end of a particular terrifying nightmare. It isn't. It's the beginning. Introducing Mr. John Valentine, air traveler. His destination, the Twilight Zone.
You could do it as him from Dingle the Strong.
Dude, that's amazing. One fun thing based on your first
what you're looking at here. Dingle the Strong.
If you want kind of a fun thing on this, especially based off of that first read you did, so in the original Twilight Zone episode, William Shatner's character was called Robert Wilson. In the movie, John Lithgow's character is named John Valentine. It's a reference to Ray Valentine of A Nice Place to Visit episode, where he only realizes he's in hell at the very end. So it's kind of implied that John Valentine might also be in hell.
I mean, he sure feels like it in this episode. Like how much he's sweating.
He's sweating profusely.
Yeah. It's just a leak.
Well, but yeah, this episode is, of course, like I said, directed by George Miller. It stars that's not the right episode. It stars, of course, John Lithgow, famous actor. I was looking at Scatman Crothers. I'm like, I don't remember him being in this segment. It stars John Lithgow as John Valentine, Abbie Lane as senior flight attendant, Donna Dixon as junior flight attendant, John Dennis Johnston as co-pilot. Yes, I said Johnson. Charles Knapp is in this. Chrisina Nigra, who plays a little girl. She's pretty well known for like Cloak and Dagger. Who's the heavyset guy? The Sky Marshal. Oh, Sky Marshal's Charles Knapp. That's where I remember him. And yes, there is a guy in a suit named Larry Cedar who plays the Gremlin. So yes.
Howard Johnson is right.
Bill Brasky was a son of a bitch. Okay, so let me start out this this episode. Do you remember the TV episode, the 60s version? Well enough.
Very
vaguely.
I remember it's black and white, and William Shatner's in it.
And he's on an airplane.
Yeah.
It also has an exceptionally bad looking gremlin.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I remember that. I remember the gremlin is not as good as this one.
Nope. He's a lot less juicy.
Yeah, it's of the time, so
Absolutely.
This is a movie, that was a show in the 60s.
I actually went back and caught the highlights of the William Shatner one. It's interesting. So he's got Nick. Where did he go? Oh, there he is.
There it is. Yeah.
The one thing that the original one has that's interesting compared to this is William Shatner's character is married, and he's coming back from a stay in a sanitarium after having like a massive mental breakdown on an airplane 6 months previous. So they're flying
another airplane.
Basically, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. But he has someone with him. He's not by himself. So there's that whole thing that's different.
Well, I was gonna say, I remember them trying to get the woman from Nick of Time to play his wife in this one. They couldn't do it for some reason.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Does he hang out the window? 30,000 feet.
Not that I remember.
That's what I want to.
He does shoot a gun. He does grab someone's gun and shoot it out the window. And also, might I add, seeing people smoking on a plane, even in the 80s, was so strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is this shows you how old planes are or the parts they use. I was on a plane. I mean, it's been a few years since I last flew, but a lot of planes still have ashtrays. You can't smoke on them, obviously, but they still have ashtrays in the arms. Makes me wonder, how fucking old is this plane?
But yeah, so this episode or this segment basically opens up with a very bombastic Jerry Goldsmith score, and very much the very sweaty John Lithgow freaking the fuck out on the plane. He's literally just like in the lavatory, just like having a panic attack. And he's never that is its only kind of downfall, is you're never really sure why he's having this panic attack. He just has it. So it kind of questions like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, I know he has problem with flights maybe, but it doesn't get a full explanation of like who this character is. I know they have to do it in like 15 minutes or whatever, but it's just really weird. Like the stuff that George Miller does with like camera work and stuff like that, with like I don't know what the specific camera thing he's doing, but how they distort the image with his character and stuff like that, making it real.
This thing, it goes in and out.
It's very
It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable and give you
it's claustrophobic. Yeah.
Right.
And there's a lot of POV cam. Like you're gonna get a POV cam type of a feel.
Well, I never really questioned what his deal was. I felt like it was, or maybe I just picked up on it. I don't know, but I remember always understanding that, oh yeah, he's just freaked out about being on a plane. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was because I know in the 80s that was much more of a, nowadays I think it's a lot more common. It was common then, but there was a lot of fear of flying back then, like a lot. Mm-hmm. People were afraid somebody was going to have a bomb or it was going to crash or something like that. That was always everybody's big fear. Not that people don't fear of that now, but I mean, it was just a lot more back then. And so upon seeing this originally, I remember I never questioned it. I was always like, yeah, he's freaking out because he's flying.
It's there was a famous terrorist flight in the 80s that was like, I think it was caught on camera or some shit. That I think that would make sense.
Locker? Was that the Scotland? Like it crashed in Scotland?
No, it was like I think it was a Pan Am flight. It was like it was like in Georgia. Anyways, it was a Pan Am flight that had, or maybe it was Scotland. I don't remember, but yeah, I didn't definitely see this because I know that was a huge thing that happened.
There were a few bombs on planes.
Yeah.
That time period. So.
Right.
My biggest question from the start is, and depending upon like what's causing him to freak out, because he talks about the statistics for so many different things, but why did he? If he knew that he was scared of planes, why did he get on a plane to start with? And I know that takes away from the episode, but
because we needed an episode,
right? Exactly, and therein lies the thing. But
the story said so.
Yeah, that's what it turns into. So,
well, that's the question I have to you guys: is this segment feels more about a guy who's having a mental breakdown and having this idea of like being panicked on a flight. Do you think the gremlin's real? Because it's a story about a guy seeing a gremlin on a plane, destroying the engines, kind of causing the plane to crash. Do you think it's real, the gremlin?
Well, given the end of the episode,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I always wondered if like the gremlin was real, but what do you guys think of like John Lithgow's performance in this? Like he's a famous actor, famous theater actor, and of course, been nominated for Oscars at this point. Like, what do you guys think about his character and just like how he's handling it?
That was great.
Yeah, I did a great job.
He was thoroughly freaked out.
Yes, and I think he played that like trying to put a lid on his anxiety and then failing time and time again. I would also add, and this is kind of a random aside, but you look at all the other people that are on this flight, and like all of them are just like, I wouldn't want to deal with any of them. You've got the annoying kid, you got the drugged mom, the weird old couple. Like
I like how they take this woman's child, and all she goes is, "Oh, what'd she do now?" I'm like, somebody just took your kid away.
I love how the
airplane.
I love when they bring it back to the seat and the old couple just goes like in third from the sun. They're like looking over the seat. They're like, they just move back down. But yeah, this is as episode or this segment in a nutshell is basically them trying to calm down, keep this guy from causing total chaos on a plane. Because you sit on a plane and someone starts freaking out, and you're in the middle of like 40,000 feet or 30,000 feet or 20,000 feet in the air. There's nowhere to go. So that person starts freaking out. Like, people are going to freak out and they're going to be like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? That's why the flight attendants are trying to calm him down. They're talking to the co-pilot. Yeah. So they're trying to calm him down. They're trying to give him sedatives. And this is when he decides he's going to look out the window, which, if you're on a plane, you don't want to be looking out the window during a storm. It's actually a good idea that they actually set this during the storm because it makes you can have the practical monster be somewhat scary. I can only imagine being on a day flight and looking out and seeing this gremlin, which is what I wouldn't call the greatest looking costume. I mean, it's no like 1960s Twilight Zone gremlin, but it's pretty rough. You can tell they had to jaws it a little bit where they had to kind of keep it out of focus for the most part.
But wouldn't you want that? Yeah, wouldn't you want that though? Like you wouldn't want it to be seen. Like when we were talking about the invaders, the thing that brought on that downfall regarded, I know, 1960s little hand puppets, but the thing that would have made it better would have been if it had kept in shadows, and that worked here.
No, I know. I'm just saying like the costume
design. I thought it was cool. And you're right. Yeah, it is a costume, and it's a man in a suit.
Yeah.
But I thought with the rain and the lighting and all that, I mean, they don't show it a whole lot. It's usually kind of shrouded in shadows, stark contrasting light and stuff like that. I thought it scared the living shit out of me when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, no doubt. The reason I say that is because I think why we've talked about this, why Jaws works so well is you don't see the monster very well. You see it very sporadically, and that's more horrifying than seeing the creature like as we said in the Invaders. It looks like the Michelin Man or some shit. And here, I think if it had been full bore outside of like when he sees it in the window, I think it would have been less effective. So having the rainstorm and stuff like that really works for it, and that's why I think this this segment works, especially watching it now compared to when I was a kid, which I was more scared of the Joe Dante segment. But he looks out there, and of course the creature is destroying the plane. The first time we see him, we see the creature, the gremlin, gets struck by lightning, which is absolutely fucking terrifying because you see like the plane engine exploding and the creatures like just yeah. There's a point where he's doing like Doctor Strangelove where he's riding the bomb, but he's riding the engine and like he's destroying the engine and shit. It's fucking terrifying, but and then I think he's messing with like the flaps at some point, and that's when the plane starts like kind of jarring and stuff like that. But I gotta ask, people are like, as these things do, people look out the window and they don't see anything, but as a kind of work through of this episode or the segment, like what do you guys think about that watching it now? Do you think it's still just as frightening and scary, or do you think it's a little more cheesy and more cheeky than it used to be? Like what do you guys think now of like the stuff that he's seeing, what's going on? And this is not even talking about like near the end, about 15 minutes later, but like what do you guys think about that kind of stuff?
I think it definitely builds in your mind what you kind of question what is like at that point. You're gonna go, okay, he's taken pills when he was in the in the bathroom. What are those? Was he the jittery that he's suffering? Is it because of what? Yeah, exactly. Is it because of what the pills he's taking? Because none of them seem to do anything. The sedatives don't do anything. Is he high on meth? I mean, we don't really know.
I mean, he's pretty sweaty, so
yeah, exactly. So we don't really know, like, we don't really know, like, at what level the gremlin on the wing is, and until the pilot confirms that they had an engine blown by lightning, we don't have that confirmation of that what he's seeing is things that are actually happening.
Yeah,
I thought the creature was still effective.
Absolutely.
I wasn't scared by it now as an adult, but I definitely could see even like a kid nowadays looking at this and being like, just the way that they moved it and everything. And I love practical effects. And this was practical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nowadays it would be a CGI monster or something like that, and it just wouldn't hold the same weight. Well, yeah, you could have CGI that looks a lot more like I'm not gonna say realistic, but more detailed and more emotive and things like that. There's something about it being a practical thing, a human being either in a costume or something, a thing that you could reach out and touch, being there, that just always adds more everything to it. And that's what this was. And I thought that the design was cool. And like you said, it's really freaky when you see him like over there. You just kind of see a silhouette like riding this thing and getting struck by lightning and just like tearing shit off and all that. And like it'll look over at him every now and then. And it's like, oh, fuck, he sees me. So I thought it was pretty effective.
Oh, actually, I didn't know this. Because of what happened with John Landis, George Miller was so repulsed by the entire scenario, he abandoned post-production of this segment.
Wow.
And Joe Dante was actually a supervising editor on it. And interesting.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he probably doesn't talk about the segment because of that incident. He probably like almost disowns it a little bit. But I mean, yeah, it's pretty effective. The gremlin's pretty effective, but like it's a little bit different in the cabin. You have the guy, the heavyset guy who you find out is a sky marshal. You have the really annoying girl who, like I said, is in, of course, Cloak and Dagger. She, of course,
who has
one
of the best lines in the whole thing, where she says something along the lines. The dude's like freaking out, and she's like, "You used to be a nice man, and now you're not."
Well, that's the also funny part is like she's like berating him for smoking, and she has like, I'm assuming supposed to be an homage to the doll, maybe of like one of the episodes. And he puts the cigarette out after the sky marshal looks at him, and then you go back to the little girl, and now she's asleep, and she has a blanket.
I was assuming there was some like time dilation there or time change there that we just didn't pick up on, but you're right. Yeah, it's like shows her, she's like da, 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 and then it shows him and it shows her, she's like knock the fuck out.
right. And the flight attendants and the co-pilots are doing what they're doing. They're trying to keep him calm so they can fly, land this in the next 20 minutes. And as we see, the gremlin basically starts destroying the other engine, starts riding it like, the pilot in Doctor Strangelove. And this is when we get because the plane's starting to spiral out of control, it's starting to possibly crash. That's when the canisters, the Deus Ex Machina canisters appear. And of course, the Sky Marshal has a gun, but he starts destroying easily destroying the window. Apparently there is no double pane window glass on this. He's very, very strong and able to destroy it pretty easily. He gets tackled by the Sky Marshal, and then he takes a gun by biting him, and blows a hole into the window, and decides he's going to. He gets pulled out of the window and has the handgun and starts shooting it at the gremlin. And the gremlin, is like, no, we're not having any of this, and bites the gun in half, which I thought was awesome. And then he points the finger. He's like, no. And then he just kind of flies away like Superman or something like that. You get to see kind of, I think he has a tail or something like that. So it makes me wonder if like he didn't want to fully destroy the plane, or maybe he did. He got stopped from doing it, and he realized like they're getting close to landing, so he's got to go off and destroy another plane. Or it's a really weird thing with the gremlin at the very end. I don't know what they were aiming for, but
that's what gremlins do. They just fuck shit up.
Yeah.
I
would
Gremlins
assume
are
that it
just-
gets too far down. Maybe he can't survive, or maybe like
he's-
he risks being seen.
I've done my work here. I fuck shit up. I'm out. I mean, that's really what they do. Like in World War II, that's where the whole gremlin thing and gremlins in the engine and all that. And they even talk about it in the Gremlin movie, I think. But like it's just shit being fucked up, and that's what the mythical creatures, the gremlins, that's what they do. Is they just, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. They just fuck shit up just to fuck it up. He did that.
He did.
That's the question I have though about this segment is the gremlin picked this particular plane with a character who's having a massive panic attack, who's probably snorting cocaine and all kinds of drugs. Was it just fate? Was it just a happenstance? Was it just circumstantial? It's really kind of interesting how the one plane with the craziest guy who's definitely going to blow out the pressurized cabin window with a gun is just the same plane that the gremlin's on. It's just, I don't know if the gremlin like senses like, freaked out people and knows where to go. And I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Because it's really an interesting thing to think about. So
It's like we talk about how he hangs halfway out the window and gets caught by someone, and how fucking dead he would be.
Oh yeah,
that would have sucked his body out into the fucking atmosphere.
Yeah, instead he just has ice on him, or no, he has like the face when the gremlin touches his face, and it's just all of a sudden he has like, I don't know if he has ice on him or goo or what he has on his face, but
there's no human being that could have held him inside that cockpit or inside that airplane.
Well, if you want to go from what the trivia said, he could possibly be in hell, and this could just be an extension of hell.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, maybe he's his own personal hell. Maybe this didn't ever happen. Maybe it's all a fantasy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's this Shutter Island for the Twilight Zone.
Also, can I just say that those poor flight attendants, they're like freaking teachers, like or babysitters, like the amount of stuff that they had to put up with, they're not being paid enough. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh man, have you seen the videos of like after the pandemic when people started flying again? The stewardess or flight attendants, whatever you want to call them, they're like they're like teachers, like you just said. Now they're just constantly dealing with the fools and morons and idiots. And
why would you want to do this?
Like, I spilled my drink somehow. Oh, it's okay, sir. We'll get you another. Just like, what the hell?
But with that said, this episode or the segment it ends with, of course, Valentine's going, I saved him. I saved everyone. And of course, he's being taken away in an ambulance to take him to be checked at the sane asylum or the whatever. And he gets put in. And I swear I thought the mechanic that comes up was smoking a cigarette, but I think it was the flashlight he put in his mouth. But I could have sworn it was a cigarette. Apparently one of the passengers is Rod Serling, so I'm assuming it's like his daughter or wife or something like that.
Well, Anne Serling is his daughter.
Yeah.
So
but she probably would have been that old at that point.
No.
I mean,
I
don't know what year she was born. She wouldn't have been an adult, I doubt.
Oh, it is Carol. His wife is one of the passengers in the plane, so that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, I was just reading that. Nice. But yeah, I thought the mechanic was like, I thought he put a cigarette in his mouth as he's walking up the steps. I'm like, that's really not something you should be doing as a mechanic when you're trying to investigate a plane that was having issues. As we see, the plane's all fucked up, the engine's all destroyed. They're all looking like, what the fuck is going on? because all they thought maybe the engine kind of went out because of a lightning strike. There would be massive multi hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage from a lightning strike. But I mean, yeah. So that's a Twilight Zone ending right there. That's a, holy shit. I guess sure, maybe he was right.
But it's not the only ending.
Nope.
It gets better.
Yep. But wait, there's more.
There's more. It gets better.
But that leads into why we talked about the prologue. At the very end, we see John Lithgow's character Valentine in the plane, and of course the little curtain, because the 80s ambulances
in the ambulance. You said in the plane.
Oh well, yeah. I'm sorry. In the ambulance.
Get to the chopper.
It's in a plane. It's ambulance. Whatever it is. No, okay. In the ambulance with the curtain. Apparently, they had curtains in the 80s ambulance and stuff like that. We see.
They also had shag carpeting.
True, in the ambulance.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Dan Akroyd's in there, which makes me wonder, like, what is Dan Akroyd in this particular series, like in this movie? Is he like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, he's the actual gremlin. He's the Twilight Zone himself. But he's like he's talking to John Lithgow's character, and then all of a sudden CCR plays, and John Lithgow goes, "Man, I love me some CCR," and that's when Dan Akroyd goes, "You want to see something really scary?" And Rod Serling starts talking. He gets his opening narration, and that's the end of the movie and the end of the segment. So it's like I said, it's not a long segment. It lasts like 15 to 20 minutes, typical Twilight Zone episode. But what do you guys think overall of the segment? Like, what do you guys think of it?
It's pretty well put together. I mean, it doesn't stop. It's got good pacing. It pays homage to the Twilight Zone episode while still kind of going on its own path, which kind of was a prerequisite for any of these segments.
Yeah.
It was nice that it connected to the wraparound, which was cool.
Mm-hmm.
So
good reach
no
around.
complaints.
Good reach around.
Very good reach around. Enjoyed the Gremlins design. So John Lithgow kicked ass.
I thought it was good. This is like I said, this is my second favorite of the movie that I remember, and I thought this was. I also mentioned I thought this was like the most iconic one out of all of them in the movie. And from what I remember about the episode that it's paying homage to, I think it did a pretty good job. From what I remember, I don't remember a whole lot about it. But pretty much I just echo everything Trish said. I think it was really good, and the creature design was cool. And I know you didn't love it, Nick, but I thought it was very effective. And John Lithgow was good, and everybody else played their part. I mean, it had a snappy pace, and it never lulled, and it just told its story, got in and got out.
Yeah. I find it's very interesting to see, like we talked about, it feels very not George Miller, to be fairly honest. It doesn't feel like a George Miller thing. It feels very different than what the other directors are known for. Like I said, It's a Good Life feels very Joe Dante. Spielberg feels very, the very kick the can style. It feels very like that. And of course, John Landis killing people. With that said, I find it good. I find it very very close to the original series episode. It feels like it pays the homage properly and does a nice job. And having John Lithgow really helps you. So I really appreciate it for doing that. In all honesty, of this episode, it's good, or the segment. It's fun. It's entertaining. It shows the like I was saying earlier, it doesn't feel like George Miller, but it definitely is George Miller, because he definitely knows how to ramp up the tension when it works. And now that we've seen this segment, like, where I guess because Jacob, you haven't seen this for a while, you said you would rank this like one of the top two of the whole entire movie
out of the four.
The four. I mean, we can rank this
not
against
for
the
Chance
Twilight
to
Zone list.
Dream.
We don't have a Twilight Zone list. We don't have a Twilight Zone list for this. So
yay.
Well, from what I remember of these, I haven't watched these in a while either.
Mm-hmm.
I remember them vividly, but I mean, from what I do remember, it's been a while. Looking at them from a critical standpoint, I recall this one being probably my second favorite. I've always kind of said that the one with the kid and putting people through purgatory or whatever he's doing is my favorite. But I mean, that was years ago. I don't know. I might watch it now and be like, yeah, this doesn't work. I don't know. But I know Kick the Can is my least favorite.
Yeah.
Which is Steven Spielberg. That's fucking crazy. I love Steven Spielberg, but yeah, that it didn't do it there.
Not in this case.
Not that I remember. I remember that being my least favorite, which was not part of the question at all.
No, but what about you, Triff?
Yeah, I think this was probably the thing about like the kid one. I enjoyed it, but it felt a little long to me. And I guess being that it was the kid that wishes everybody into the cornfield, essentially. It was a different take on that. And
yeah,
it was very well done. Like you had that crazy Joe Dante energy, and it had a lot of good stuff. I don't know if I'd rank. I'm kind of with you though. Between that one and this one were probably like my two go-tos. The one where people die, it's like, yeah, that's bottom of the list. And Kick the Can it had a sweet message. It's it's very traditional Twilight Zone. I think like of all the ones that we saw, I think that one sits closest to like what a traditional Twilight Zone episode would be. But yeah, I'd say like, neck and neck, if not, thereabouts. If this one might edge out a little bit on the Joe Dante one, just edge. Because it didn't. Yes, I did say edge.
Joe Dante's edging.
Yes,
George Miller's edging.
George Miller is edging. Yeah. Well, actually, Joe Dante is edging on George Miller.
I'm gonna have a hot take. I'm gonna have a hot take here real quick.
Go for it.
I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. I'm just
Go
step
ahead.
in here, and I'm gonna say that this is number one, the best segment of this movie that I've watched recently.
Man, that is the hottest of hot takes. I'm gonna take a hotter stance than that. I'm gonna say that the 3-minute ending is the best segment of this whole thing.
I'm gonna make it even hotter. I'm gonna say this is at least the top 4 segment of the yeah.
At least
this is the top.
Top 4.
This is the top
or in the bottom
segment.
4.
Yeah, this is the top segment. This is the top segment directed by George Miller.
Absolutely. I'll say my number 1 for sure.
Yeah,
I know. This is the best. This is the best Twilight Zone segment I've ever seen John Lithgow do. So I mean,
it's definitely the best one in a plane in the movie. That's for sure.
Yeah, of the ones involving cartoon dragons, this is not one of them.
No, it's not
exactly. No. And the in episodes that you rank with Scatman Crothers, this is definitely the worst. Yeah,
worst.
Of the ones that are similar to Perchance to Dream, this is not one of them.
You guys always got to bring that shit up. Look, I want this at number 12.
Okay.
I think if you have above the actually, I think right now if you have above the top 15, I think you're good.
Yeah, it's somewhere right around there. It's like 14 or 15 or something.
So so number 16 is the Twilight Zone movie.
Bitch.
I mean, there you go, right?
If it's not under 15, I don't want to put it in the ranking.
Fair.
Man, we're gonna be skipping a lot of Twilight Zone episodes, especially season 4.
Oof, no loss there.
Right.
I mean, there is loss because there's some good episodes there. But...
I do not remember like this massive drop in quality from Twilight Zone. Maybe I watched them out of order. I don't know. I did watch
It's not all of them. It's just there are certain ones in season 4 because they had to fill an hour
long.
Yeah, because they had to fill an hour. Like what was a snappy half an hour episode was a bloated purple, nurple, ugly, orange skin. Green toenailed, fungusy, bad, awful, smells like onions on a bad Tuesday type
but not
of
bad, huh? But not really that bad, she said.
Let's just say this. They're number 15 or lower episodes.
Quite descriptive.
That
I'm looking forward to season 4.
Not all season 4 is like that. There is some good stuff in season 4, there is in everyone. But
if it makes you feel any better, Jezebel will probably be above for Chance to Dream.
Oh, really?
Really?
I've heard.
Really?
See, I think Is Jezebel
Really?
your Perchance to Dream, Triv?
Yes, it is. I hate that episode with a flaming passion.
You know, and I know that Nick's Perchance to Dream is 16mm Shrine. The only difference is it's not your Perchance to Dream because it's near the fucking bottom.
And Jezebel hasn't come about yet, so you know.
Oh man, I actually didn't realize Richard Donner actually directed the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet episode. That's interesting.
The original one? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So we gotta blame him for the creature effects.
Well, it was the 60s. Everything looked like that. Did you see Star Trek? Like the Klingons didn't even have head things. They were just, weird looking Vulcans.
Yeah.
They had pointy ears, and that's it.
I mean, clearly Leonard Nimoy hadn't, ripped his cloak that he wears to wear as a bandana, and as they're looking for whales.
Nanu, bitches.
Anyways, so with that, so with that said, that is going to kind of end the episode. There is no real rankings because this is a offshoot of the actual thing that we do in real life. The fifth dimension. So this isn't real life, people. This is
like 5. This is like 5.5. This dimension.
Exactly. Yeah.
We could say where would we rank it?
Where would you rank it?
We know where he'd rank it.
Top 15, baby. I mean, I don't have the other ones in front of me, but I would say this one was on up there. I mean, especially when comparing it to the original Twilight Zone episodes. I mean, the story's good. I think the original story was good too. That's why they picked it for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But the effects and, of course it looks better than the 60s show. I mean, it's 20 years later. So, or more than 20 years now, actually. So, I mean, it'd probably be in top 10 if this was just an episode that somehow made it into the original Twilight Zone just as it is. I'd probably put it in the top 10.
You know where I would put this?
What's in there.
I would put this right above The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
So, anyways, with that said, Eye of the Beholder is now number 55.
Damn.
I don't even think
that means The Invaders is number 1.
Yay!
But yeah, we're not really we're joking around. We're not actually ranking this because there's no point. There's only 4 segments, and they're all have their own weirdness to it. But I think that's gonna do it. I think that'll be our talk of course the 4th segment in the Twilight Zone movie. We'll get to the other segments eventually at some point down the line, maybe like Christmas or something. But yeah, with that said, that is our look at the prologue and the segment 4, which is directed by George Miller of the Twilight Zone, the movie. And Triv, you like to inject yourself out into pressurized cabin windows and stuff like that. Really went way westward and backwards.
I wasn't sure where this was going.
I was kind of
I was saying like she was like you like to do like break down windows and barriers and jump out pressurized windows.
I like to shoot out pressurized cabins and fly out windows.
Okay. To get your content out there to the people. That's where I was going with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
For more horror-based content that doesn't necessarily involve gremlins and or men that to get too much into stats, you can find on my channel, which is Trivial Theater, do a wide array of random, obscure, and straight up bad movies. You can also see me on Twitter at Trivial Theater.
Trivial Heater.
Yes, Trivial Heater.
Yes.
Well, with the thing that I'm working on that's actually dropping today as well, they call me Trivial Titter because my avatar has quite large tits.
There you go.
Right on.
Like, yep. And Jacob, as you nod your head and you're the one you come in and you destroy our podcast like an engine of a plane, and you do things
like a gremlin.
Yeah, like a gremlin. Anyways, where can they find your content at?
Find my content at Jacob Anders Reviews on YouTube, where I do a twice weekly show, Tweekly, the Almost Awesome Show, where I talk about news and entertainment and stuff like that and do reviews sometimes. It's every Tuesday and Friday as of right now at 2:00 Central Time. I also do other standalone reviews here or there. Got quite a few. By the time this airs, they would have already been up quite a bit. So I'm sure I've got some other ones, some really awesome content. I'm pretty sure I just released something the other day. That was some of my best work. You should go check it out. Give it 1 million views. It's some good shit. It touched me in places I haven't been touched since I was a child. So check that out. What was that?
Oh, I was gonna say it touched me in ways that made me feel like a virgin touched for the very first time, like a virgin with a heartbeat.
Like a virgin. Yeah, me too.
Yep.
I laughed, I clapped, I hurled.
I haven't been caressed that way since my parents dropped me off with my neighbor when I was 5 years old for the day. And
wow.
Hey Billy, do you like stories about gladiators? Have you ever been to a Turkish bathhouse?
Sir, I believe he's gone from suck to blow.
Somebody did, but
And this guy is large. Anyways, with that said, I am at Movie Emporium. That's where all our content is at, or where all this content is at, where all the videos post. I have things like Jacob said, I have things that people watch and may have things to say about, that type of thing. But because this is posting Halloween, once again, I am going to be taking a hiatus break. I'll make a post about this on my channel. But just so you know, we won't be back for a few weeks, so we can rest and get ready for Static, which is the next episode, which is another videotaped episode. But other than that, you can also find us on audio feeds like Arrakis Radio and Anchor and Jason Voorhees Takes Manhattan and Uranus and iTunes and SoundCloud and Google Play and Cats and I don't know, mass hysteria. You know how this works. But anyways, if you listen to us on audio feeds, definitely give us some star ratings and comments. So, but without further ado, for myself, trivia.
What? Trivia time.
Wow. Are you seeing another trivial avatar behind my back? You bastard.
No.
Living room.
Wink. No, that's going at the end of this episode. But no, for myself, Triv, and Jacob, we'll see you guys next time in the Twilight Zone. Peace out, motherfuckers.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, when I worked at Blockbuster, did you work at Blockbuster, Jacob?
Yeah, I was a manager at Blockbuster for.
You remember when you put the little signs up for like what's coming soon or what's out, the little placard things? You would put them up in the
desk.
Yeah. They had an A-frame that was sitting in front of the store, and Pecker had just come out, right? The Edward Furlong movie. The movie that was right above it was called Big and Hairy.
Oh God.
I never took a picture of that, but I laughed my ass off when I saw that.